The arbitration numbers are in. We'll get to that and a whole lot more. Hunter Baumgardt is our guest here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good to have you here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. My name is Chuck Freeman. And, we haven't had a lot of news here in the last week or so. Took a couple of days off. It's 24/7 with Brewer Talk, but we're finally getting back in the news. And spring training, 6 weeks away? Hunter Baumgardt is joining us right now, 97.3 The Game. And the baseball post-game show on 97 covers the Milwaukee Brewers on a regular basis. My partner in crime, one of them, out there at AmFam Field. Hunter, appreciate you coming on the show, HB.
Absolutely. Always enjoy talking with you, Chuck.
Hey, we're 6 weeks away. We're 6 weeks away. The blood start to go in a little bit pretty soon. You'll be spending every night at the old ballpark.
It kind of feels like we just left. It does not feel like it's been that long. But once the new year passes, it's like, yeah, baseball is the reality of the 2025 season it's right around the corner, and I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Is baseball the quickest off season, maybe?
Yeah, that in the NBA. I mean, the NBA I feel like the NBA never stops. I feel like that season is way too long. For some reason, the baseball season is long, but it doesn't feel like that. Like it makes sense for how long the baseball season is. NBA feels like it's just unneededly long. I feel like they should start at Christmas and go to June instead of starting in October. But that's a whole different podcast, and maybe a whole different Locked On podcast. But the Brewers, I think with baseball, it is. I mean, it's pretty short, right? I mean, if you go to the World Series, it's about Halloween, and then you're going to about April 1st, but especially when you make the postseason like the Brewers continue to do, that offseason continues to be shorter.
Although it's only been a couple of days of the postseason last
I know. I wasn't going to say it. It's
been a couple of days. As we always say here in the offseason, we're looking to extend that next year.
Yes.
Hey, let's talk about these arbitration numbers, Hunter, and we'll talk about the rest of the team as well. McGill, Cortez, Mears, Payamps, Savali all agree. No big surprises here. Contreras, he wanted 6.5. The Brewers came in at 5.6. Either way, it looks like a cheap price for Contreras, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And then a lot of these are. I mean, if you get McGill, your everyday closer, for $1.94 million, and how good he was last year in Devin Williams' absence, that's really good. Savale and Cortez, I feel like that's about the money they deserve. Mears is kind of that dark horse because he came to Milwaukee in the trade, near the deadline, day or two before, and he was hurt for a fair amount of time. So it was hard to really know what you have in Nick Mears, but I feel like he could be a key cog in that bullpen. So getting him at less than $1 million could be really fruitful. And Yoel Payamps continues to earn a little bit more and more, but he's under $3 million. The Contreras thing is the one to watch, right? Because this two sides can still talk, even though they filed at different numbers. But of course, then it comes down to, are they going to go to the hearing like they did with Corbin Burns, or like Devin Williams? Will they not go to a hearing and eventually just agree to Devin Williams was a year and an option? And you wonder if maybe they do that with William Contreras, if they somehow, or, in a dream world, extend him for a long time. But I don't know how realistic that is right now.
What's funny about baseball is everybody gets mad when Shohei or one of these guys gets the big contract. Oh, there goes baseball. But then when the Brewers come back on Contreras on 5.6 and Contreras is 6.5 million, people side with the player on this and they say, oh, the Brewers are just cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Because the player eventually gets the team. He eventually has a say down the road.
Oh, totally. It is. That's true. It is. You're kind of balancing it. It's hard to even fathom the kind of contracts that are going around baseball now. Mm-hmm. With Ohtani and Soto and this specific offseason and where everything's going. But yeah, it is wild how sometimes they can really pinch pennies. I mean, Corbin Burns was that example, right? Where they went to the hearing over not that much money. And so it was like, and to a layman, it's like, well, what are you doing? Just give him that money that he wants. But in the grand scheme of things, it comes down to, setting the precedent for future contracts and everything like that. So it's a bigger organizational look at it rather than this specific player and what he deserves.
Look at that. The Brewers, Cortez, $7.6 million, Savali, $8 million. Those could be 2 either 5 starters right there. They may trade Savali, but as right now, those are 2 guys gunning for one of the 5 spots.
For sure. I think I would expect the 2 to be in your rotation. Unless in spring training you feel like one of your young guys is going to be there. But boy, oh boy, I think Freddie, Tobias, Woodruff. If Woodruff is fully healthy, which we can get to later, but if you got those top 3, and then Ashby, DL Hall, Savali, Cortez. I think Cortez is in there almost for certain. That's 4, and I do think Savali gets that 5th. So I think you're going to, get an $8 million guy there, Colin Ray type of situation. And I was fine with what Savali did last year, especially at American Family Field. He was pretty good at home. So I like, if Savali's your 5th option, I think that's a pretty strong rotation, especially if Tobias can do what he did last year.
Yeah, I was looking at Savali's numbers. He made 14 starts. Didn't seem like he made 14 of them, though, did he?
Well, they traded for him in early July, if memory serves. So he was he wasn't necessarily around the trade deadline, but more so they wanted a couple more starts than, say, a Frankie Montas, who they got the night before the trade deadline.
Yeah. They got it right around the All-Star break, or not the All-Star break, the 4th of July, that one dropped.
Yes. Yep. Just before the All-Star break. Yeah.
So those are the arbitration numbers. Yeah, when we come back, we'll take a quick break here. We come back. Hunter Baumgardt is joining us, 97.3 The Game, producer, on-air talent, you name it, and covers the Milwaukee Brewers on a regular basis on their terrific post-game show. We come back, we're going to talk about a few things, including Jake Bauers, and we're going to get into Brandon Woodruff, who talked to the media recently, most specifically the Journal-Sentinel. We'll get to that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here on Locked On Brewers. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about along the way? Were you paying like twice for some subscriptions? Hey man, some of those people out there, they'll try to bill you up a couple of times. That's why you need Rocket Money to help you out, man. They'll detect those things. I had a few subscriptions once. I had 2 to a magazine, and they were charging me twice. I didn't even realize what I was doing. But Rocket Money can help me, it can help you, it can help everybody. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills, grow your savings, everything you need. They've got over 5 million users, and they've saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Hunter Baumgardt is our guest. They have him aboard here on Locked On Brewers. And by the way, you got a podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast, we're there. And of course, our growing YouTube page, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That alerts you every time we drop an episode of Locked On Brewers. Brandon Woodruff talked to, was it Adam McKelvey? I think it was Adam McKelvey. I said the Journal-Sentinel. It was Adam McKelvey I actually talked to. So we talked to him the other day. Woodruff's words were he doesn't know if he'll be ready for spring training, but it sounds like he feels better than he did 3 months ago.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist that I got too, was that he was not where he wanted to be at the end of the season. He was hoping to do some live BP at the last series of the regular season, wasn't able to do that. But sounds like since then he's made a lot of progress and he's working with the Brewers, and this offseason has been big as he tries to prepare for spring training. It sounds like he, can't commit to opening day right now, but that does not mean that he can't pitch on opening day. I would be surprised if we don't see him pitching in spring training games. I think this is going to trend in the right direction. It really sounds like he's made a lot of progress in the last 3 months. But boy, these injuries can be tricky. But I have this hunch that he's going to be ready for, if not opening day, I don't know, first month of the season. I gotta think.
Up in a perfect world, if he returns to the Brandon Woodruff that we all know and love,
Mm-hmm.
he's an ace, right? He's the top of the rotation guy. Would there
Mm-hmm.
be a controversy there because Freddie's already the number one guy, but Woodruff has been there, done that before.
Well, that's the thing. Like, what if you go through spring training and he's fully 100% ready to go for the opening day at Yankee Stadium? Do you put him out there on the mound for opening day? He said in that article, he said, whether it's opening day or whether I'm, third, fourth, or fifth in a line, I'll be ready whenever my number's called if I'm healthy. So I think he's resigned to the fact that, okay, Freddie proved himself as an ace last year. Was Freddie Peralta the ace of like a Corbin Burns? Maybe not, but he's also a really good pitcher and a really good number one. But boy, if Brandon Woodruff is the Brandon Woodruff of old, I think he has to be your number one guy. Now, after opening day, number one doesn't really matter. It's kind of like the batting lineup. After the first time through, It's all jumbled anyway. So it doesn't have a huge effect until the playoffs. And then you can just decide, wait, that's way later in the year. But I think he is your ace. But again, I also think he kind of has to prove it, which he said in the article too. He's like, I'm kind of on a 1-year prove it deal which excites him, it seems. And so he has to prove that he is the Woodruff before, or else Peralta still is your ace.
And I don't think he'll pitch on opening day because he'd be on a limited pitch count. And not that all these guys start, but I mean, I would think like his first start, he's going to make 3 innings, right?
Yeah.
He may even have an opener for him. Let him go 3 innings. He's not going to go 5 his first start, I wouldn't think.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, do they do that stuff maybe in spring training and then he's ready for opening day? But then again, that depends on how healthy he is coming into spring training. It's all going to be about this timeline. But I agree with you. I got to think Freddie's going to be your opening day starter, and then Woodruff slots in, maybe even 2, but probably not your opening day.
Boy, I think eventually, I mean, when you look at a guy who could be your ace, I mean, who knows? And I've always said I just never count on a pitcher, especially who's coming back from a shoulder or an arm or anything like that, a back. It's tough to really count on a guy like that. But as you said, and we both have chatted with Woodruff all these years, and if there's a guy who's going to work his rear end off, and you never know how the body's going to respond, but still, it's Brandon Woodruff, isn't it?
Well, right, and that's what gives you hope, and that's what gives you to say, oh my, if Woodruff becomes the Woodruff of old, say in May, June, and as we get into the summer months, then all of a sudden you have Freddie Peralta and Brandon Woodruff at the top of your rotation. And then you start to have kind of shades of a couple of years ago, and it's just minus Corbin Burns. But otherwise, Tobias Myers pitched about as well as anybody for most of the summer last year. So if that's the case too, then all of a sudden you have 3 deep in your rotation. And then everybody just files in kind of after that. But I feel really good if Brandon Woodruff comes back to even close to what he was as an ace before the injury.
You mentioned an interesting name there, Tobias Myers, who came on the scene last year. It's kind of been a little bit of an early career minor leaguer. He's 26, 27 years old. Are you all in on him? And do you think the Brewers are all in on him? Or is it like still a wait and see of this guy? I mean, he had a great year last year, but we've seen that before.
Oh yeah. And I think it's harder to prove it in your second year than it probably is, your first year. Once you prove you're, major league worthy, which he absolutely was, and he's proven that he can pitch in the playoff, all that. So I think he's going to be in that rotation, and he pitched to a 3.00 ERA last year, which is really good for a rookie year. And like you said, he was a career minor leaguer before that, but the Brewers have this track record of turning guys who have struggled in the past into really good pitchers, and pitchers who can sustain success too. So I do think that he is going to be a solid pitcher. Now, can we expect exactly what he did? And he was pitching about as well as almost as well as Paul Skeens was, for about 2 or 3 months there, June, July, August. I don't know if it can be that high of expectations, but I do think the Brewers are high on this guy. I do think they should be. I am, and I think he'll be top 3 in your rotation, I would think, to start the season.
Talking to Hunter Baumgardt from 97.3 The Game, and of course, their baseball post-game show. He covers the Brewers on a regular basis. Here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. All right, let's not include Woodruff right now. Why don't you give me your 5?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's So it's Freddie Peralta.
Yeah.
It's Tobias Myers.
Tobias, where I'm with you.
Yep. And then Nestor Cortez, I think, is in there too.
You know he's going to be in there.
He is. You traded for him. He's going to be in there. You traded an all-star closer for him. He's going to be in there.
Absolutely.
I think Aaron Savali's in there.
You don't think they're going to trade him?
I don't think so. I mean, unless they can, they see a third base opportunity, an infield opportunity. I don't necessarily think they do. So I think he's there at 4. And then again, I probably would go Aaron Ashby as your 5. Although he's pitched better out of the bullpen in his, overall, it seems that maybe he's more fit there. DL Hall's kind of the same way. He pitched better as a reliever, but I still think this team wants him to be a starter. So I can see DL Hall as maybe a 5. Maybe they go 6-man with those 2. And then the big thing is, where's Logan Henderson? Where's Jacob Mizorowski? Where do those guys fit in? Do they start him in the bullpen like they did Corbin Burns? Do they start him there and then they slowly work into the rotation? That's going to be fascinating out of spring training. Do those guys make the opening day roster? Because last year it was the Churio watch. Is Churio going to make the opening day roster? He did. Phenomenal rookie season after getting out of the gates a little slow. Do you maybe put those guys in the minors for a couple months to start and then bring them up? It's going to be fascinating to see. I think obviously injuries will play a role like they always do, and they usually work themselves out. But I think those are my 5. I would put Ashby at 5.
There's such a crowded bullpen right now. I don't see how Logan's going to make it. Mizorowski, I can see that. But even he, I mean, if assuming, Abner Uribe is part of this team, which I expect, the Piamps and Figueroa and all the rest of these guys, and the 2 lefties, I mean, that's a crowded bullpen that will work itself out. But where do you slot Mizorowski in that? Right.
Well, that's the thing too. And what role? Like, is he your long relief guy? Is he kind of what DL Hall did last year where you can piggyback him off? Or what's the best way to put him in the major leagues? And this is why they're paid the big bucks to make these decisions, Pat Murphy, Matt Arnold, because it's tough, because I'd love to just say, okay, let's give him the ball every 5 days and see if he's, what he's got. But I don't think throwing him into the fire that way is necessarily good. But then he's been used to being a starter. Then he was used out of the bullpen some. So he can do both, but I think if we look back at what the Brewers have done with pitchers in the past, when they come up, it's usually bullpen, then transition to starter. So I think I see that with Mizorowski, but the question will be, is that opening day or is that down the road?
One more segment with Hunter Baumgardt, and we'll cut him loose as we're going to ask him the $1 million question. Who is playing third base? We'll get the Hunter. Finish that up coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game time. I'll tell you what, if you want tickets for any sporting event, doesn't matter what it is, concerts, theaters, you name it, Bucks games, college games, Game Time is the way to go. I love going to live sporting events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, you name it. And one of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. And I got like second row at the American Family concert venue down at the Summerfest grounds. Second row. And I got them cheap for like 45 minutes before the concert started. And it was awesome. Game Time has made it easy to get tickets like this, to concerts or Bucks games, you name it. It's just a great way to go. And I'll tell you, the key, the Freeman tip, you wait late in the game, man, those prices start dropping on Game Time. Amazing deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Hey, you got to download that app first of all, and that first purchase, you buy $80 worth of, let's say, Marquette tickets, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It is game time. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Dr. Baumgardt, our guest. Good to have him along from 97.3 The Game. HB, we got playing third base.
The law firm of Dunn and Monasterio. I It's platoon right now. I don't think there's. It's all the above. Is there an all the above? Is there A, B, C, and then D is all the above? Because it's wild. I mean, they don't have a sure guy over there. I mean, Oliver Dunn played it early in the season last year.
He played for about 2 weeks. He was good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is he an everyday third baseman at the major league level? Probably not. Yeah. But same with Monasterio. There's these are bench guys. But right now, I think Caleb Durbin is more of a second baseman, the guy you got from the Yankees in the Devin Williams deal. I think he's more of a second baseman. Maybe they try him at third, but I think when I think of a third baseman, a shorter guy like a 5'6" Caleb Durbin is not necessarily who you picture. Now, they also tried Sal Frelick over there, who's also a shorter guy, and they were ready to do that had Mitchell not gotten hurt last spring. But I do think Caleb Durbin is more of a second base guy. So maybe does that trade signal Bryce Terang maybe going over to short and Joey Ortiz is your third baseman? I think I don't think this is a foregone conclusion that Ortiz moves to short. I think this is a conversation and a spring training type of thing where this is kind of what we saw at third base last year, where who was going to play third base? It was some Joey, it was some Sal, it was some other guys. I think this might be see some Joey at short, see some Terang at short in spring training. And then also, I wonder if during the season, this is a little more of a rotation than we think. Now, of course, they're going to have one guy's going to play the most at shortstop. One guy's going to play the most at third base. At third base, I don't think there's one name that stands out right now. At shortstop, if I were to give a prediction, I'd say Joey Ortiz. I just think that they probably want to leave him alone. Reading into Pat Murphy's comments, reading into Matt Arnold's comments, I just think it's probably going to be Ortiz there at short for the most part. But there's times where maybe you think Durbin has a really good matchup, throw him at second, put Terang at short, and Joey Ortiz back at third. I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they can maneuver their infield because they're going to have to. They don't have that everyday presence at shortstop, and I think they're going to do kind of the Craig Counsell thing where they kind of move around guys if they need to, and they have a lot of versatility there.
I don't like any of those 15 options you just gave me on third.
I'm so non-committal. It's so wild. I mean, it's like I'm looking at it's like Vinny Capra. I don't know.
Oh, you didn't mention Tyler Black. Thank you for not mentioning him.
You know what? I purposely we talked last time at length about Tyler Black. I just don't. I'm getting less and less sold that the Packers, that the Brewers are less and less sold. I for some reason. I don't know. It's Tyler Black's just fascinating.
First base, if anything. Although we got Jake Bauers.
But they just signed Bauers back. So, is that going to plug a hole? That Tyler Black or plug a position that Tyler Black was maybe going to be as the backup first baseman, possibly. So, lots of moving pieces in that infield.
How brilliant are the Brewers, though? I mean, they cut loose of Jake Bauers. They get him back in a minor league deal.
I know.
Jeez. Now he's got to make the team with an invitation to the major league camp. The guy hit the big home run in the postseason last year.
Yeah. He almost advanced you.
What's that?
He almost advanced you in the playoffs for the first time in years. I'm glad they brought him back. I think there's something there, and maybe it's just the playoff home run that's sticking in my mind as it's recency bias, but I do think there's something there with Jake Bauers. I don't mind him. He's pretty good defensively.
Yeah.
What's that?
A lot of strikeouts. I know that.
That's the thing. And so I don't think he's no way he's your everyday guy. I think Reese takes a step forward. So I think Reese is really your everyday guy. And then when you need a guy, you put Jake Bauers in there. And I don't feel like you have a massive step down, especially defensively. But can Jake Bauers play third base? Can he be another third base option that I throw out? No, he's not.
Well, he plays the outfield for you if you need it, but he got enough.
He could.
But how about this? Bauers, who they cut loose, okay, they bring him back on a minor league. The guy who they bring back on a minor league deal, okay, pinch hit for the guy who picked up the $18 million option in the postseason last year because Bauers pinch hit.
Yes.
I
had forgotten, and I posted on my Twitter when Bauers resigned the home run, and right before you hear the Boog Shambi on the national call go, and he's pinch hitting for Rhys Hoskins, and I went, Wow. Yes, he did. Like, I totally forgot that part of that at bat. That Bauers was pinch hitting for Hoskins because they're struggling. I mean, he was struggling. Contreras, Adames, they were struggling in that playoff series.
Yeah, and then Bauers hits the big blast there. So, but I'll tell you, you did mention Sal Frelick. That would be my best option at third. Sal Frelick's my best option at third.
Yeah, he was a Gold Glover in the outfield. It's tough because your options here are a Gold Glover at second moving to short, a Gold Glover in outfield moving to third. I think Sal is going to get some run at third, but I don't think they're as gung-ho on that as they were last spring. I could be wrong about that, but I agree, but I still wonder if there's one more move to make here, and maybe that is the Aaron Savali trade, but I feel like there is one more move to make. Otherwise, you are maybe going to count on Frelick. Otherwise, your internal options are Derman, you'd be an other side's third baseman, Oliver Dunn, Vinny Capra, Andrew Monasterio. I mean, you're going to need someone to really. I mean, you're talking about trying to fill the hole of Willie Adames. So, it's going to be difficult. I mean, it's going to be difficult to fill Willie Adames' shoes.
Well, spring training again coming up in 6 weeks. I'm getting kind of excited about it. I drove by MFAM Field the other day, and the blood started flowing a little bit. Hey, Hunter, man, appreciate it as always, man. We'll catch up to you maybe around spring training or so. Get your thoughts on a few things. Hopefully, the Brewers make a blockbuster deal. I'm not counting on it, but
they traded Corbin Burns in late January, I think it was. So you never know. I mean, I know that was a star player going out, but they got Joey Ortiz a deal hauled back, which is big. So no, always appreciate being with you, Chuck. Always a fun time.
Hunter Baumgardt, our guest, 97.3 The Game, and also the baseball post-game show. This is Chuck Freeman. Hey, get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcasts. And, of course, our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. That alerts you every time we drop an episode. Thanks for making us your first listen to on Locked On Brewers every day. For your second listen, go to Locked On MLB. My guy, Sully, has got all the offseason news. My name is Chuck Freeman. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.